Hi, this is Dr. Rodger Murphree, thefibrodoctor.com, author of Treating and Beating Fibromyalgia and Chronic Tig Syndrome. Thank you for joining me today for this short video. I'd like to just share some information that I have learned over the last 2 decades of specializing in treating and beating fibromyalgia. You know, there's a lot of debate out there about what is the cause of fibromyalgia, and certainly we want to keep that debate going. We want to look continuously for more and more answers to this thing called fibromyalgia. But the challenge with fibromyalgia is it really is not your typical illness. It's really a syndrome. It's made up of a group of symptoms, primarily diffuse achy muscle pain, fatigue, low energy, low moods, certainly have brain fog and restless leg syndrome, irritable bowel. All these things can be a part of fibromyalgia. Not everybody's fibromyalgia is the same as the next person, but there's definitely some common denominators. And so while there's a lot of debate out there about what causes fibromyalgia, whether that is some type of trauma or small nerve fiber damage or all these different theories out there, what I've learned is that really fibromyalgia is brought on by stress. And it's when you say stress, it's really not the stress of being a 40-hour work week. It's when the body gets under too much stimulation and it can't keep up with the demand. You see, we're all born with a stress coping mechanism. We have a little robot that controls the body. We are able to regulate our body temperature. We're able to regulate how well we respond to stress, our circadian rhythm, our sleep-wake cycle, our immune system. We don't have to think about these things. We don't have to think about pumping blood through 60 miles of arteries and veins every minute, taking 12 breaths per minute. We don't think about these things, thank goodness. We have an autonomic nervous system, or an auto-running nervous system that controls these things. And this is really made up by the hypothalamus, a gland in your brain that controls these different systems. Now, when you get under too much stress, these different systems start to shut down and they start to go haywire. And that's the challenge with fibro, is that in the beginning you may have diffuse achy muscle pain, and then it's poor sleep, then you start having problems with your bowel regulation. And a big part of that is because, again, the self-regulating mechanism or system gets under too much stress and starts to interfere with regulating these other systems, whether that's your pain coping mechanisms, your sleep, or your immune system. And really, what I use is the analogy is that we're all born with a stress coping savings account. And in that stress coping savings account, we have chemicals like serotonin, dopamine, cortisol, DHEA. We certainly have vitamins and minerals, magnesium, pantothenic acid, B2. We have these things that allow us to be able to deal with stress. Now, the more stress that we're under, the more withdrawals we make from our stress coping savings account. Now, we make deposits into our stress coping savings account by going into deep restorative sleep. When you go into deep restorative sleep, you're making deposits into this account that allows you then the next day to be able to handle the stress that we all encounter on a day-to-day basis. But now, if you're not careful, you can make more withdrawals than you do deposits, and that's what happens with fibromyalgia. Something comes along and eventually they bankrupt their stress coping savings account because they get under too much stress. It could be a divorce, it could be a surgery, it could be an illness, it could be something that has been going on for years and years and years, an abusive boss, an abusive spouse. There's several things that can bring this on, but really eventually there's something that comes along, is the straw that breaks the camel's back, and then the person starts to have all the troubles that we see with fibromyalgia. You see, if you're not making deposits into your stress coping savings account, you really don't have any stamina or resiliency to stress, so stress becomes more magnified. The thing about getting low in serotonin is that it's a crucial brain chemical or neurotransmitter, because we know that the higher your serotonin level, the higher your pain threshold. So the higher pain threshold, the less pain you have. When your serotonin level goes low, pain is magnified. And things that didn't bother you in the past now have become much more pronounced, and that's what happens with fibro. It may start out with some aching neck pain, and then gradually it starts to get to where eventually you can't even stand to have a tight blouse put on, or a handshake, or to hug somebody, or even to put your feet on the ground because you get so much pain in your feet. And that's because your serotonin level is low, and you get a condition called allodynia, where you have a low pain threshold. Now, the lower your serotonin level, the lower your ability to handle stress. The higher your serotonin, the happier you are, the more mentally coherent you are, mental clarities go up, and the higher your serotonin level, the less likely you are to have irritable bowel syndrome, because you have more serotonin receptors in your intestinal tract than you do in your brain. So you know, if you do have IBS, you know that the more stress that you get under, the more likely you are to have a flare-up. But the big thing is, the higher your serotonin, the higher your pain threshold, so pain is less magnified. What happens is, with traditional medicine is, unfortunately, traditional medicine is very good at treating symptoms, but oftentimes doesn't explore or try to find out the causes. In fibromyalgia, because there's so many symptoms involved, low energy, pain, poor sleep, poor moods, irritable bowel, restless leg syndrome, before you know it, you can be on 5, 10, a dozen different drugs, each drug trying to treat the symptoms associated with fibromyalgia. What we really need to be doing is thinking about what are the causes of fibromyalgia. Unfortunately, when you get fibromyalgia, you're oftentimes then labeled as a fibromyalgia patient, and because of that, then they start sweeping all your symptoms underneath the fibromyalgia rug. If you have poor energy, it's just because of your fibromyalgia. If you have a lot of pain, it's your fibromyalgia. If you can't sleep, it's your fibromyalgia. Now, the problem with that is, when we have that mentality, we're treating symptoms instead of causes. A case in point is by using antidepressants like selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors like Celexa, Zoloft, Paxil, or selective norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors like Effexor, Savella, Prestige, Savella. You know, these medications are designed to help your brain hang on to serotonin and norepinephrine so you get more mileage out of it. The problem is, if you look at a normal brain, there probably is a lot of serotonin and norepinephrine in there to reuptake, to reuse. And so it's kind of like a gasoline additive. You use that to get more mileage out of your gasoline and your gasoline tank. The problem with fibromyalgia is because you've been under so much stress and you've depleted your stress-coping chemicals, including serotonin and norepinephrine. You're trying to use a gasoline additive, and there's really not any gasoline in the tank. So you're using a serotonin reuptake inhibitor, there's nothing to reuptake. So the problem with that, treating symptoms and not causes, is that oftentimes when you're using these medications, they can lead to more problems. So with fibromyalgia, then sleep is a real issue, or lack of sleep. And so in the traditional world, this leads to medications to help the patient go to sleep. The problem with that is all these medications have potential side effects. In fact, Ambien has all the same side effects of fibromyalgia, so it's a mirror image. So we really don't know, is it the fibromyalgia because you'd be having a flare-up, or is it the Ambien that's giving you a problem with fibro fog, mental clarity issues, achy muscle pain, fatigue, low moods? Certainly can do that. And then the other medications here, the tricyclic antidepressants, Elavil, Trazodone, those medications have potential side effects, including weight gain. They deplete your natural sleep hormone melatonin. They can cause anxiety and depression. They can lead to tardive dyskinesia, which is the shakes. So they're not without side effects. And a lot of patients are taking benzodiazepines. These are tranquilizers. Those medications don't put you into deep restorative sleep. Now, they knock you out, but you're not going into deep restorative sleep, and they're associated with many side effects. Patients not only bankrupt their stress-coping savings account, but they bankrupt their stress-coping gland, their adrenal glands. So what I've found over the years is that it makes much more sense to look for causes instead of treating symptoms. And in fibromyalgia, the symptoms may be low moods, the symptoms may be poor sleep, the symptoms may be diffuse achy muscle pain, but that doesn't mean you have a Prozac deficiency or a Mobic deficiency or an OxyContin deficiency. The challenge for the physician, if they will take the challenge, is to do the detective work and find out where you're broken down biochemically. Once you do that, you can make changes. I would encourage you to learn more about what I do in my practice by visiting thefibrodoctor.com and learning more about what you can do in your quest to reverse your symptoms of fibromyalgia. This is Dr. Rodger Murphree, thefibrodoctor.com, author of Treating and Beating Fibromyalgia and Chronic Fatigue Syndrome.